What really sticks in the mind is the sight of the empty shelves, you know. All the books had been borrowed.
There was an eerie kind of silence about the building, and it was so visible that something so strong had happened.
At the end of every day, obviously, we close the library, and we always have a routine, and we say sort of lights off, doors locked. And to do that, when you looked around the library and there was not one book on the shelves, it was a very special time. Yeah, I won't forget that.
Wot No Books.
Hello, we're in Stony Stratford Library in England. Stony Stratford is a small town, part of the larger city of Milton Keynes, 60 miles north of London. The library is part of the fabric of Stony Stratford in the local community. Looking around here today, nothing seems unusual. But 2 years ago, things were very different. In January 2011, 16,000 books were borrowed in 1 week, and there were no books here at all. The story of the library with no books quickly spread around the world. The story begins at the end of November 2010, when rumours began to circulate that the City Council, which owned and managed the town library, intended to close it as part of the 2011 local authority budget cuts. The Stony Stratford Town Council, together with the local Milton Keynes councillor, started the fight. They wrote to each of the town's residents, urging them to write to the leader of the council, asking them not to carry out their threat. More than 1,300 local people did write in protest.
I personally didn't find it particularly surprising. I knew that we would get that kind of response because there's nothing so much as something people use regularly, think it's going to be taken away from to stir emotions and passion. So I was very much with them on it, and I would say we took over 1,300 responses, but it did have an enormous effect because there's nothing like a weighty load of letters that come in the doormat every morning from about the same subject to make councillors think, maybe we're doing this slightly the wrong way.
The library already had its own community-based Friends scheme, and it became a natural focus for the campaign against the proposed cut.
The rumours about the closure were spread very quickly in a place like Stony Stratford. And so immediately people knew that this organisation existed. You know, it became the mechanism. So people, new blood flocked in, and we couldn't have done it without the new blood coming in.
We spend a lot of time as a family in the library, and we visit the library 2 to 3 times a week, not just to get books out, but for the children to enjoy the computers and the magazines and lie on the floor and read. And the thought of that being taken away and was quite horrific, really. Rory set about designing a poster, which he brought down to the library on the very first day, and the librarians took that away and produced into posters for the shops in Stony Stratford.
This is our banner we had, and that we brought that to the committee meeting. This is the poster that went in all the shop windows in Stony.
On the 21st of December 2010, on a snowy evening, members of the community, wielding a newly made banner, attended a Milton Keynes Council Cabinet meeting.
I protested outside the council building with banner and the drums in the snow, which was quite dramatic, and also went in and heard the speeches in the building.
Myself and my husband felt it was quite important that we involved the children in the council meetings that took place. And so even though there was a lot of snow, we took the children up in their snow boots and coats and made a banner and stood outside the council office with the banner and the children, and made the children aware of what we needed to do in terms of shouting and telling and spreading the news and the message that the library needs to stay open.
In spite of the demonstration and the representations made by Fossil and the Stony Stratford Town Council, the Cabinet confirmed its decision to make the cut.
After the initial meeting at the council, I thought we ought to set up a petition and I went into the library and asked if I could do some photocopying, and I bumped into Peter Waterman, who's the chair of Fossil, and he said, well, if you become a member of Fossil, then we get free photocopying. So he said, I can co-opt you right now if you want, and then you can be part of Fossil and have the photocopying with petition. So that's how I sort of became a member of Fossil.
The paper version of the petition was signed by 2,508 people, and a further 1,027 signed the online version. It showed how much local people valued libraries in general and our library in particular.
I use the library every week, and it's part of the day we set aside. We read extensively and get through the books quite quickly.
I like that there's lots of different kinds of books and you can just read about anything really.
I go to library because sometimes internet browsing, sometimes speaking English book, and cooking book sometimes.
I use the library to get knowledge on subjects for my homework and for projects. Also use the library for just general reading and just staying with a book in a quiet environment.
To me, this particular library is at the heart of the community of Stony Stratford. So, in a sense, I always looked on them as my extended family, and they know me by my first name. So this is a place where I feel happy and accepted and very comfortable, and of course surrounded by all these wonderful books.
Surrounded by all those wonderful books. That's what libraries are all about. But if we wanted to make everybody aware of our fight, locally and further afield, could this vision be turned upon its head?
Well, the idea of emptying the library came from back when I was at uni, late 60s in Sheffield, and as part of Rag Week, one of their usual stunts was to drink a pub dry. They would make it known at the last minute when which pub it was, and so everybody would descend. And as a librarian, I've always quite liked that concept, in fact, and so that was where the idea came from. When I suggested it, I thought, well, there'd be enough books out to be able to create some space in a section of shelves and get the local paper along. But it was amazing. I mean, the library was half empty before it had even been the campaign had even been publicly announced.
Because I live near the library, I just dashed across, and I happened to have one of my granddaughter's library tickets with us. So I took out 45 books, and I selected the heaviest ones because I thought it would save other people having to carry them.
Seeing the empty shelves was really, really unbelievable because, you know, we didn't know how many books there were when we first started. We decided to do the campaign and to empty the shelves, and then we sort of calculated there were 16,000 books, and we thought, oh, maybe we should have thought about this a bit more, but then they went, and it seemed to be quite easy. You know, everybody wanted to kind of help, so seeing the shelves, you know, was really great because it meant that, you know, so many people wanted to be involved.
The impact of the campaign on library staff, of which I'm one, was amazing. It happened so quickly. We knew it was going to happen, but we didn't quite understand just what it meant. All of a sudden, hundreds of people were coming into the library and taking out the full quota. They were bringing their children in, and the children were bringing out their full quota. So it all happened very quickly. And it got to the point where we looked around and we just thought, we're nearly empty, they're going to do it. And that was really exciting because initially we didn't think they'd do it.
I mean, it made life difficult for a little while because it was so busy. We were rushed off our feet. And then we'd got some customers, and I don't blame them, they were coming in and they were saying, well, you haven't got the book I want. And that became a bit of a problem. We were having to get books in from other libraries so that we could meet the need, but we didn't really want to do that because we wanted to empty our library.
I felt quite proud doing it because it shows them that you can take our books but you can't take our freedom. So we'd still carry on reading, but it was quite shocking seeing a library without any books.
So after floating the idea, it was taken up, and pretty much all I did as part of the campaign, which Fossil ran so brilliantly, was borrow my 15 books and spectate. One of the books I borrowed was actually, I thought, quite fitting, the Book of Lost Books, which is quite illuminating.
The defining moment from the Wot No Books campaign has to be when the whole library was empty of books and magazines and DVDs, and there was nothing left on the shelves to see. There was an eerie kind of silence about the building, and it was so visible that something so strong had happened that it filled everybody with quite emotion and a sense that we'd actually achieved something, and the national coverage and press coverage about it, that was our last hope, and that was all that could be done, really.
When the library shelves started to become clear, I took pictures and I started emailing those out. But it was only purely by luck, really, that it started to take off around the world. And I believe it started when I did a 3 Counties radio interview, and Anglian News heard it, and then they came for 3 days in a row to film it. And then after that, it just sort of snowballed, really, and I'm not quite sure exactly how people got to know about it, but I believe Twitter was involved. But it just kind of went so quickly, you couldn't keep in touch with it.
Besides filming scenes in the library, the programme makers took 2 young library members to meet author Philip Pullman and Ed Vaizey, MP, the UK Minister for Culture, Communications and Creative Industries, to discover what they thought about library closures.
I was reading Philip Pullman's book at the time, so it was very inspirational meeting him and how much he wanted to keep the library open. Ed Vaizey, he was a very important man, and it was just an absolute honour to meet him. But he was very informative, but I guess he was in the middle of, if this library stayed open, where would we go, and questions like that. He couldn't really decide.
Philip Pullman was more to libraries should all stay open, because it's just like if their libraries were closed, less people would read and things like that, because if you didn't have the money for books or something like that. But Ed Vaizey, he was more on, he wanted them to close because of the taxes and things like that, but he was both on both sides to thinking about closing and opening.
The library shelves were emptied between the 12th and the 15th of January 2011. But that was not the end of the protests. The Friends organised a read-in event on the 5th of February as part of the national campaign against proposed library cuts, and Mark Neal, the bard of Milton Keynes, performed his specially written poem.
From the first scratch of stone on stone, to marks in clay and cuts in bone, from papyrus parchment, paint on silk, to Gutenberg's Bible and printer's ink. People have recorded knowledge they gained, events and mysteries have been explained, from classic novels to Winnie the Pooh, a universe of writers wait for you. And when you walk through a library door, that world is yours to fully explore. But where doors are closed, our minds will follow, and saving money sounds far too hollow when future generations will bear the cost if their doorway to the world is lost. So I hope the protest of empty shelves makes the purse holders ashamed of themselves. The lack of books speaks volumes. Thank you.
10 days after the read-in, the Milton Keynes Council Cabinet meets again to consider whether the Stony Stratford Library should close. In spite of further presentations at the meeting by the Town Council and Fossil, the Cabinet confirms its decision to close the library. However, on the same day in Stony Stratford, the Town Council meets to discuss the situation.
Well, it was very clear to us that if somebody didn't offer to accept to take over the management of the building, to begin to precept to raise money to do that, that the library was threatened with closure. We had informal discussions with Milton Keynes Council officers and with Milton Keynes councillors at the time, and it was put to us that if we were prepared to make an offer, then we would do so. It was a difficult judgment because it meant that we had to raise our precept quite dramatically and at very short notice, without any guarantee that we would get ownership of the building. But we felt that the support of the community, which was demonstrated through the number of people that signed the Friends petition and the number of letters that went to Milton Keynes Council itself complaining about the closure, the proposed closure, was certainly suggesting that there was support for the action that we took. We agreed that we would precept to take over the running of the building. We wanted to make clear from the very outset we were not going to run a professional library service. We didn't view that as our role. That is definitely what Milton Keynes Council should have done, should continue to do. But that in terms of an asset, a physical asset of a building, that was something that the Town Council was prepared to precept for.
Just 1 week later, on the 22nd of February 2011, Milton Keynes Council meets in full session to make final decisions on all of their proposed cuts, one of which was the closure of Stony Library.
It was a very emotional time, I have to say. The budget went on till 3 a.m. in the morning, so most of the people had already gone home. But by that time, we'd already known that the library was going to be safe for a further 12 months, whilst a period of consultation was to happen. And what I needed to do was to, because they were trying to take £170,000 out of the budget, because Woburn Sands and Stony Stratford libraries were due to close, I had to come up with a plan or an idea of how that £170,000 was going to be saved. Because any fool can sit there and say, you know, don't shut my library, but you have to try and find the savings from somewhere else. So I came up with a plan that perhaps we could get rid of some elected politicians, and which would save, I think I agreed a third politicians could be axed, and I don't think the public would have noticed any discernible difference had they been, and it just happened that would raise about £170,000, and of course that would have been a year-on-year thing, so that would have helped save the library. I'm not sure if I got my colleagues' support from that particularly, but I did also say that I would be one of the ones that would be prepared to go in order to save the library. So, like I say, I'm not normally an emotional person, but I do remember at that time I was actually quite close to tears whilst I made that speech.
So the library closure was delayed for a year, and a year on, the library service was spared for at least another 3 years by Milton Keynes Council in the building now under the ownership of the Town Council with a signed lease of 25 years and high hopes.
I think the crucial point about the future of the library is this is a crucial local resource. We want to maintain it and enhance it as a learning and as an educational hub. We think the work that Friends are doing in terms of organising evening events, getting speakers in, is something we should support. It would be great to get it brought up to have full-size proper Wi-Fi, to get the windows replaced, and to continue to invest in it as a capital asset for the town. So I think that's how the Town Council views it. Potentially, it then becomes the kind of key education centre for the whole of this area of northern Milton Keynes, which is a long aspiration, I think, for all of us to hold on to.
So why was our campaign so successful? I think there are several reasons. Because it was legal, it was free of charge, and everybody could participate. Emptying the library of all its books had a great visual effect and attracted plenty of attention from newspapers, TV, and web-based media. The Friends The local community and local politicians worked closely together and were persistent and determined. The proposed takeover of the library building by the town council supported a city policy of disposing of assets to save money, and the town tax could be raised at a time when city tax had to be reduced. But perhaps the single most important thing was that local people cared about their library.
Library's been important to me the whole of my life. But when I was a little girl and wanted to join, you had to prove you could read. So things have changed for the better nowadays, because you see little ones running about and lying on the rug, and I think how marvellous.
I have a little sister. She takes books from in these little bits down there, and she likes big books with lots of pictures.
I think the library, it means different things to different people, but it's certainly very important for children. I think it's a wonderful resource for children to come, choose books, get involved in reading. It's good for the local schools. I work for one of the schools in Stony, and the children visit regularly. And it's important, I think, for some of the children who might not get brought to the library by their parents, they still get that opportunity to come with their school.
Last year I appeared an exam, IELTS, English Language Testing exam. So I need a lot of books regarding this exam. So this library facilitates me to collect book, and I went through this book and I'm successful. And I'm really grateful for this library, because I have got all the books of my IELTS scores, and it is very helpful for me.
I know there's the Kindle, and I know there's Amazon and all the other things. There is nothing quite, in my experience, like coming into a library, seeing a real book, looking at what you really like, ordering something if you really want it. So, you know, that's the kind of advertising, if you like, face-to-face, you know, one-to-one. So I've always been, you know, in praise of this particular library, because I've lived here for so long and have used it for so long. And I would be so sad if it just left, because I think it would rip a bit of the community out, because, as I said, you know, to me, it's at the heart of this Stony Stratford community.
Over the sort of following sort of year, we have things that still kind of cropped up. We were spoken about at an award ceremony in Chicago, and also a secondary school in Australia. They did a play about what we did, and I think one of the teachers actually came to visit the library when they were on holiday in England. And things still crop up now. I still get the odd contact where people want to know what we did or ask how it's going now.
I think I remember when I'm a little bit older about the campaign, that this library was a lovely place, and that I helped out.
The biggest impact, I think, was the sheer strength that people power can actually make against the council and reverse their decision. I mean, we were initially thinking, well, the decision's made and that's it. But to show that if people actually come together as a unified group, they can make things happen. And this library will, fingers crossed, stay open forever and ever due to that one campaign.
I had friends say, oh, have you been part of this? I said, well, it's my idea, actually. So, yeah, it was brilliant.